guests tonight are Moser Samuels and Rodrick Samuels. Both have been barber and beauty industry professionals for 20 years each. They started their union together over 10 years ago, and it's very cool to see two people come together and share their mutual inspiration together and to create something even more amazing. Between the two of them, there's 5 nominations for NAHA, 2 wins at NAHA, 3 International Visionary Award nominations, 2 AIPP nominations, 1 Midwest Hairstyling Award winning, not nomination, winning. And they are the co-directors of Hair Lab Detroit. So they are the perfect people for us to have this conversation tonight about how do we support this new young generation of hairdressers that are coming out. So please welcome in the chats, Moser Samuels and Rodrick Samuels. The crowd goes wild.
Hey.
What's going on, everybody? How y'all doing?
We're so happy to have you here. And like I said, I feel like you two are the perfect people to have this conversation with. And, you know, I think that there's such a different industry that people are walking into. And so, you know, to just kind of kick off our conversation, I'd love to hear from you guys. Like, what are you seeing? And that thing, let me rephrase that question in a way that's understandable. What do you feel like is changing right now for people that are starting out?
So I think there's a lot of things changing. I think the way people are booking services is changing. I think the days of the week they're booking services is changing. And we see some of it on our clinic floor. I think the approach to careers in our industry is changing. I think, you know, I came up in the career in the industry in the 90s. And as he did, as my children say, in the 1900s, I started way back in the 1900s.
Cutting hair with pterodactyl feet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So they love to make us feel as old as possible. But, you know, when I started, it was 50 to 60 hour weeks. And, you know, you're new, you're going to work 5 12-hour days. And if you whine about it, you know, we're going to talk about you when you leave. And, you know, it's just like this culture of, you know, you have to work all of these hours and or else you won't make it. And while there's validity to that, you know, when you're starting out in a field where there's a million other people competing for the same thing, I think that there is something to be said for reliability and consistency and being available when people are not working and can pay you. But I think the demand is shifting, and what stylists are willing to put into it is shifting. So, you know, as one of the stylists from the 1900s, I think we struggle with that sometimes because we try to find, you know, where we fit in this and how to support younger stylists without expecting the same thing that was expected of us, right? So I think that's important. And I think what happens too is that it's kind of like an all or nothing situation. And so, you know, they're either working 70 hours a week or 20, and neither are good. So I think finding that balance and saying, okay, well, maybe, you know, 5 12s a week is a little abusive. You know, I don't think working 15 to 20 as an average is a way to build a solid foundation for your career either. So I think, you know, things like that are changing. You know, the views of what people are willing to do is changing. So I think that's one of the things that I've noticed.
Yeah. Just, you know, being in the classroom and interacting with students and stuff like that. There's definitely a big mind shift for what people's perception of the beauty and wellness industry really is. And I'm going to speak to the barber side, you know, because, you know, we're directors at a barber school. A lot of people, when they think about barbering, they don't think about barbering being before cosmetology, you know what I mean? So before there was cosmetologists, there were barbers. So barbers did women's haircuts and men's haircuts and perms and relaxers and stuff like that. And I think that the way that what newer students' perception of barbering is, it's just tapers and fades and, you know, things like that. Well, you know, for me, coming into the industry, like my wife so eloquently put it, the Flintstone age. There's a huge disconnect between what our perception of success and what it takes to be successful in this industry is versus what our current students are viewing as things that are going to make them successful in this industry. We kind of live by the story that education is not an option, it's a must. And just earlier today, I was talking with a student, and she was so very adamant about the fact that she was never going to do a relaxer in her barbershop. And I'm like, well, you know what? The way that trends kind of go, so curls are in and perms are in. What do you think is going to come back next? You know what I mean? So, people have been wearing their hair natural, especially African Americans have been wearing their hair natural for the longest time now. And we know the way that things kind of go. So at some point, relaxers may come back. But if you go in with that mindset of what you're not going to do and who you're going to be, then, for me, it's just a little bit disheartening for some of the newer barbers and stylists that are coming to the industry.
I'm over here laughing because I didn't go to school. I did an apprenticeship. And
we both did apprenticeships, by the way.
And now we're directors of a school. So weird how life works out. But, back in the 1900s when I was doing my apprenticeship, perms weren't in. We had just gotten through the 80s and everyone was flat ironing. And we all remember the flippy flat iron with the stripy highlights. And that was when I started. And so they were like, well, I mean, we could teach you perms, but nobody's getting them and nobody will, and you don't need to know them. And so they kind of brushed over it. And guess what happened? They started to come back. And instead of learning it when I had the opportunity as a young stylist, I bought into, they didn't feel like teaching me because it was a useless task. And I then had to teach myself. There wasn't even, when I was starting to do perms again, they weren't in. I was bringing them back by myself. I was in the process of just.
You are a force, girl.
Well, I wanted curly hair, and I was like, well, if I want it, why wouldn't other people want it? Come on, my hair's fine and flat and stupid, and if I can make it look good, then I can perm my hair and then sell the crap out of it and make a ton of money. So I bought a ton of mannequins and I sat there with 87 boxes of perms and just tried different ways. Now I do perms different than most people, but in all my practicing, I found ways to make it look natural. But it's one of those things that learn it while you're paying for it, because to say something's never going to come back, it's going to bite you.
Yeah,
it's going to bite you for sure.
You know what? I can honestly say that I really don't feel like today's students understand the value of what instructors and directors put into a program to make them successful. So many times we've had students that finish up and I'm never coming back here. And I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. You know what I'm saying? But as my parents used to tell me all the time, you'll need me before I need you, right? So then they get out into real work. I'm from the South. That's how we get down. But then they come back and they, it's like, oh my God, Miss Lauren, Mr. Rodrick, thank you so much, because every single thing that you said that was going to happen when I actually got into a shop or salon environment, it did happen. Well, we're not in the business of pumping people up for failure. We're not in the business of trying to sell you a wolf ticket. We're 100% actively holding you accountable, letting you know what's really going on, making you operate with a little bit of integrity. And for a lot of new students today, that seems to be, the pushback, you know what I mean? But lo and behold, coming into the industry as a new person and them actually having to roll perms because their clients want perms and having to do relaxers because not everybody wants a tapers and fades. I think that's where the light bulb kind of goes in. And, a lot of students, you hear these things in these chat rooms and these groups on Facebook, I don't know why you want to go to school. And, going to school is crazy and it's stupid. And, barbers and stylists don't make any money. And I'm like, well,
the ones that come to school and learn do, though.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
They're out here doing all the services.
Yeah.
For me, I always wanted to learn because I hate that moment when a client would come in and sit down and ask for something that I didn't know how to do. That you can feel the heat building in your body and it starts to shoot out your ears and you're
Sweat
like, what
dripping like marble cake. It's just a real bad feeling to call yourself a professional. And then you have a client to walk in and you don't know what to do.
I think that's one of the things that we have seen really shift, especially over the last 2 years, right? There has been much more attention to hey, hair's hair. We need to be able to take care of that person that sits in our chair, and you no longer get to go, well, I don't work on that fabric. I don't work on that
Right.
fabric. Like,
Well, but
that
I do notice
really
people
shifted
still
recently.
doing that. You know, I do see stylists out there, you know, turning down services left and right because they don't know how to do it and they're unwilling to put in the time to learn it. And you know, for me, it's all money. And I,
Yeah.
you know, and if I'm calling myself a professional, you know, that's like going to a dentist and going like, well, I don't do fillings on bottom teeth. I only do them on top teeth. You know, like,
But
what are
if
we
you
doing
want
here?
some gold fronts and a grill, I
Right.
got you. I'll call Paul Wall. You know, we'll get the whole. You know, you can have diamonds all in the bottom if you want to. But yeah, I think that today's student they're a little bit different. And my hopes are that they'll understand not only the love and passion that you have to be in this industry, but also like the intrinsic value. Like, we're in this industry to serve, and for whatever reason, you know, today's, you know, newer stylists and students, they don't want to serve. You know, they don't want to talk. I can't tell you how many times I've found students like literally hiding in the break room, like, oh, what kind of service is it? I'm like, it doesn't matter what kind of service it is. That's why you're here. You're here to learn. So, you know, if it's a skin fade and you wanted to do a high taper today, does that mean in a real environment, are you going to turn that money down? The only thing I'm turning down is my collar. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. You know, as the young folks would say, I'm trying to get that bag. Andrew, I don't know if you understand what that means, but it's the bag.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I did. So how are you kind of coaching the students at your school to kind of see that perspective of like, hey, we have to have this ability? And you know, I think there's, you know, I know, Lauren, you kind of have called yourself a curly hair specialist. So there's places to specialize, of course, but especially with that first few steps, I think it's brilliant to kind of share with them, like, hey, you want this ability to work on everything.
Well,
So
and
how do you kind of help coach them to that?
I didn't specialize in curly hair. First of all, I didn't specialize in curly hair on purpose or in the beginning, right? Like, this was a decade into my career. And it was just something that I took the time to learn and perfect because it was important to me. So my sister has curly hair, and, you know, sisters are mean. So she gave me those like hot flashes every time she sat in my chair. It would start to build up and shoot out my ears. And I thought, I can't do this anymore. So over time, I got really good at doing her hair, but then the curls just started getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And I had so many of those hot and sweaty moments that, you know, I just got good at it. But it wasn't anything that I walked into this career and said, this is what I'm going to do, and everything else I'm not doing, right? I literally have done everything in my career. In fact, when I started doing hair, I specialized in color. Nobody knows that. Nobody knows I even do color or know color or understand color. But it was really just because at some point my books were so full of curly clients that like my color kind of took a backseat. And all of my kind of niche things that I did behind the chair were always accidental, and nothing that I was like, I'm only doing this and everyone else can not come in my chair. You know, I made my money behind the chair on curly hair, but really where I made all my money is touch-ups and highlights. I could throw a root touch-up on in 7 minutes. So you throw a root touch-up on in 7 minutes, and then in between, because they process for 45 when it's gray coverage, I do a curly haircut for 100, and then I finish with the color right afterwards, you know, and I could do all that without an assistant. So you're looking at just cash, right? Because you're running 2 people at a time. I can't do that if it's all haircuts. And so I think that's one part of me that people don't know, is that I literally was the girl behind the chair that was grinding for 13 hours. I was booked on the 15-minute with partial highlights, and I could do a full highlight in 30, but I had to get fast, and I did basic color. I didn't get into the balayage. I didn't get into all of that because I didn't have any time on my books when it became a thing. I was already 127 million% booked. Like, I kept raising my prices and nothing was happening. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm 100% booked all the time. And so we hired people who loved doing balayage and all that stuff that I couldn't throw on in 15-minute gaps throughout my day. And it worked, you know, and it wasn't that I was turning it down. I could do them if they wanted to wait 7 months for a balayage, but nobody does. So I was booked 6 months out, always, like steady, solid. So I think I think when you go into something and going, I'm only going to do this, you're really boxing yourself in.
For sure.
Because also, like, if you're looking at longevity, like, I don't want to spend 30 years doing one service. That sounds terrible.
Yeah.
I love that throughout my career, I used to do makeup. I can barely do my own makeup now. But I did a lot of it, and I did weddings, and I did updos, and I did on site, and I've done it all. So I think having that kind of adventure makes you a really well-rounded stylist, and you can honestly attack anything that sits in your chair at that point, even if it's a texture you've never dealt with or a haircut you've never done. When you've done every single thing. And I always focused on stuff because it helped me master it. So when I started, I only did color. I got really good at color. I got bored with color.
And then you move on to the next
And then
thing.
I move on because I'm somebody that's like, when I set out to do something, I do it. And then I'm like, check it off my list. I did it. What's next? Like, what's next on the platter of life that I can master and take over and do and love and whatever. So, I spent my career just kind of bouncing around and getting really good at a lot of stuff. So you can really stick me in any situation at this point. And, that makes me marketable to companies too, right? Like, if you can grab me up and I can do your color and do the hair cutting and do the styling and whatever. I mean, it's great. It's just, it opens up a lot of doors that wouldn't be open if I had decided I only do, direct dye or something, like if I only do vivids.
Yeah. A lot of people don't know that I actually, I'm dual licensed in South Carolina. So I started off as a barber. I did an apprenticeship and, just always wanting to get better and understanding the importance of furthering my education, so I could only make but so much money just doing tapers and fades and tapers and fades. And I'm like, man, you know what? I'm not capping this thing out, right? So I was like, well, I'm going to enroll in cosmetology school, and then of course it was on like an 800-hour program, but I learned so much, and that little bit of perming and relaxing and roller sets and all the other things, manicures, and that's probably why I love manicures today. But, all those things actually help to fill those boxes of me being a true professional. And, unfortunately, and I get it, everybody wants to do what they feel comfortable with, but nobody's willing to do the things that's really going to help them get to greatness and to really kind of maximize all of their efforts. You know what I mean? Like, can I do a taper and a fade? Absolutely. But I can also do a real nice relaxer. I can do a perm. I can do blowouts. You know what I'm saying? I'm not proficient as like my wife, but if I need to, I can do all of those.
But
things.
he's nice enough. I would, my clients would come in. I'm like, oh, so my husband's gonna finish your hair and dry you and do whatever, and they're like, and it wasn't what I would do, and they're like, it's great. He's so nice.
That's the other thing. Well, that's the other thing too.
Nice.
Like really understanding that customer service piece, right? So for me. It was all about how I grew up. I'm from South Carolina. My dad was a long distance truck driver and a minister. My mom taught school for 33 years and stuff like that. So, for us, education was always on the forefront of things, but also like how you treated people and having manners and yes, sir, and no, ma'am, and whatever the case may be. And, my wife and I, we were having a conversation in our kitchen one day and we were just kind of talking about things like, what happened at the school that day. And she said, you know what? You have a lot of charisma. And at first it hurt. I got to tell
That is not how I said it. It was, we were not getting along in the moment. And I was feeling very stressed about all the things that I do in this building on a daily basis. And I said,
she said, you're nothing but a ball of charisma.
No, I said, it must be nice to just get to come to work and be nice and have all the charisma while I do all the hard stuff. And it's like,
I'm leading by example. I'm teaching the students who they need to become.
I watched the hurt wash over his face and I was like, oh.
Listen, Andrew, you've been our friend for a long time, my man. It crushed my soul. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not smart. Like I'm not smart. Like I came out, like we run this school together. Like I'm giving it 150%. But you know what though? That charisma and having that.
It's our joke. It's our running joke.
Our running joke.
Now
right?
we can laugh at it, but in the moment,
in the moment.
I watched it all explode and I was like, oh, this one's bad.
But you know what, though? I think it's important for, we talk about leading by example. I think it's important for my students to understand that, you know what, do I think I'm a really good haircutter? Absolutely. But 80%. And a lot of experts say 60%, but I'm going to, because I do have a little extra charisma, right? My Southern hospitality and my mannerisms, 80% of me being successful in this industry is 100% just being nice, anticipating people's needs, asking if they're okay, coming by and speaking to people, even if they're not my clients or, whatever the case may be. I always make sure to make my rounds. If we have clients on the floor, introduce myself. Hey, how you doing today? Can I get you anything? Break the ice a little bit. How did you get our best barber in the building? And they're like, oh my God, I didn't know. I'm like, yeah, me either. But listen, you're going to be fine, but here's the deal, right? Not only does that make the client feel comfortable, because the ultimate goal is to build trust so you can build a clientele, but it also lets the student know that we are very confident in their abilities and skills so they can perform whatever service that comes into our building.
Yeah. And I think that keeping an open mind and being willing to continue to learn is what prevents that burnout, right? We know, because we've been doing this for decades upon decades, that it's that being in that stagnant place where you're like showing up to work every day, doing the same thing over and 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 over, and you get burnt out on it, and it
becomes monotonous.
It's that education and learning something new and then applying it in your daily job, and you're uncomfortable and you're excited to try it and you're anxious to try it on your clients, that is what keeps you energized to continue to give, because it is exhausting. I mean, being in the service industry is exhausting. I would like to talk about real quick, touch on what Kelly said. I think, I'm on a lot of those sites and a lot of those groups, and they do, I always joke that it's the equivalent of, the bad break room in the salon. Like these groups all remind me of let's go in the break room and talk about everybody. Let's talk about the owner and let's talk about the workers and let's talk about the clients and let's be focused on all the bad and whatever. When I see things like that in those groups, I think it's a lot of insecurity,
and fear.
Yeah. And those people aren't willing to put themselves out there. It's hard to learn, right? It's hard to put yourself out there and know that you could fail. And so when I see reactions like she's talking about, where it starts to get an attack and kind of nasty, it's insecurity. And I think it's important to understand that they're never going to get the fulfillment out of this career that you are. And it's hard because in that moment you're like, oh, why do you have to be nasty? But the reality is that I think society is at a place right now, and it's very unfortunate, that instead of having intellectual dialogues that could maybe bring enlightenment to both sides, it's attack, name call, get aggressive. And unfortunately, that's just where we are. We see it in these sites happening with clients, and everybody feels entitled to unearned respect. And that's just, it's hard to deal with.
Yeah, we even, sometimes we even see it in students, they don't like certain rules or regulations that we have and stuff like that. And that's fine. But there's a method to our madness. There's a reason why we have a dress code. There's a reason why we ask you to come in, and be on time to school and things like that. Those things are so important, because if you condition their minds to do those things while you're in school, then when you get into a real shop and salon environment, it's going to be easy, Playing sports, my coaches used to always say, the way you practice is the way you play. So if you practice like crap, you're going to play like crap. And I take those same lessons that I learned from athletics and stuff like that to how I implement, our curriculum and our lessons on a daily basis. If you show up for your job 80% of the time, right? You show up for your job 80% of the time, you're going to get fired. If you show up late to your job 5-6 times, you're going to get fired. So why would I pump my students up for failure? I gain nothing. We gain nothing by being very truthful and very honest with our students. Both of us having so much experience in the industry, it doesn't behoove us. It doesn't benefit us by any means to lie. and to tell these untruths. We have this big thing about putting hard lines in haircuts, right? And I'm like, hey guys, you know what? The easiest way to take a line out is to not put one in. Well, Mr. Sam, I can't really see the haircut. I'm like, well, Ray Charles can see that line when you put it in. So how about let's not do that? Like sometimes I feel like students look at us like our kids do, and like we're these old fossils. But at some point, we helped to bring the industry where it is today. So how do you think that we got as far as we did by doing the stuff that you guys are doing? So I just want to encourage, like, if you work in schools or in education in any facet, it's not about who's right, it's about what's right. So teach your students about what's right. We work in the personal appearance industry. So, and I hope I don't hurt anybody's feelings, but,
Or maybe we can get some insight. Us folks from the 1900s, like maybe we just don't know what's up anymore. But one of the big fights we have is like sweatpants. Like nobody will come to school in actual clothes. Yeah. Like it's like pajamas every day. And the argument is they will have no problem getting a job dressed like this. And I would never hire them, but maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. So anyone that's on here, if you want to throw your 2 cents in the chat, it seems like sweatpants and flip-flops and, that stuff is the norm in the industry now. And, and I'm not saying you have to wear a 3-piece suit to work, but maybe brushing your hair and putting actual shoes on would be a start. And then maybe I just don't know.
So Ron, let's see what Rhonda's saying. Oh my God, leggings, sweatpants are everywhere.
I can live with the leggings, right? If they're worn like as tights would be, right? Like in place of some tights, but like as a pant.
So Rhonda, I want to tell you a funny story. So we had this whole discussion with our student body about sweatpants, and one of our students says, "Well, I don't see why we can't wear sweatpants because women wear dresses." What? Hold on. What? I said,
I said, if you want to wear a dress, you should
do your thing, homeboy. We are not mad at you, okay? You know what I mean? But I think that that's one of my students, Kentrell. Remember Kentrell? But I think like the biggest thing is, we were always taught in our training, you dress for success. My grandfather, God rest his soul, you dress for the job you want, not for the job you have. So. So when you see me, I'm dressed in a suit and things like that because, that's the way that I was brought up, and, we like to get comfy. Don't get it twisted. There's times where we got our sweatpants on, but it's not.
I've got them on right now.
Yeah. Listen, my wife will not even go to the, and if you did, it's cool. Just make sure they're champions, man.
I have my sweatpants on too. It's called a dress. Apparently they're interchangeable words. You can interchange them at any moment. So I also have my sweatpants on with my legs out.
But it's just, I think that when you work in the personal appearance industry, you have to give a little bit of care about your personal appearance. And, maybe it's lost on us, but I think that, well, let me rephrase that. My hopes are that, at some point it'll come to a time where, the level of professionalism is not skewed. Everybody has their own definition of what professionalism is, but, for the Sam Villas and the Nicholas Frenches and the Ted Gibsons, the people that we were always, looking at and saying, you know what, I want to be like that person. I ain't never seen Ted with sweatpants on. Like, that's my guy. You know what I'm saying? I ain't never seen, I just don't understand where it comes from. But if there's an opportunity for us to do something better and to kind of change and change the narrative a little bit, I think that we should all work towards doing a little bit better, But
it could be, that's probably what's driving a lot of people into suites is the accountability aspect. But,
So can we highlight this one, Andrew Kentrell Jenkins? He was one of my students in South Carolina, and
you can charge $100 for a cut looking like $2.
It can. And Ken, I got your message. I will return it. But yeah, you're 100% right, and that's one of the things that we preach to our students on all the time. You want to make $100 a haircut, look like $100.
Well, yeah, but the response we get is, well, I only want to charge $10 for a haircut, so it's fine. And I'm like, but you should probably still put pants on. Like, right. I mean, even
so, do you feel like it's a perspective of what's possible? is it a bit of like, well, I'm only going to charge $10, so that's all I'm going to dress for?
No, I think
it
it's if I
central?
say I'm only going to charge $10, then I don't have to be held accountable to all these standards that they're trying to teach. So if I explain to them that I'm not looking to charge more than $10, they'll leave me alone and let me do what I want. Right? Like I've actually had students say, well, I'm not looking to make, I know that I won't make a lot of money. I'm fine charging $10 a haircut. And I'm like, do you know how many haircuts you're going to have to do to like put gas in your car? Like
Bazillion.
5,000 haircuts. Like, what's the plan here?
Scientific notation on your haircuts, you know?
But, another one of the issues that we see a lot is anxiety and mental health being a big thing and a big reason why these students are turning down all services or coming to school and refusing to participate because of mental health and anxiety. And I had to sit back a little bit. And this is one thing that is hard because I'm an empath. I'm very empathic. I, struggle with other people's emotions probably more than I do my own. And, I got to a point in my life where I had to like put walls up all the time. Otherwise I was like leaving and carrying all these burdens and people will say anything to get out of anything. So I'm over here carrying emotion that's not even real. Like it's like
as
made up.
As my mom would say all the time, a lie doesn't care who tells it.
Yeah. So, I ended up getting really like black and white, and it's like, well, my mental health, and I had to say, like, I'm not the one. Like, I understand, and that's, we can hook you up with professionals, but you're not paying me to care about your mental health. You're paying me to make you a barber. So at some point, I can hear you and understand you, but we need to find a workaround. Otherwise, you may need to pick a different career.
And it got to a point where we kind of like said, you know what, we went through and Lauren worked on with her team, and we found resources for these students, like,
But they have to do the work, and they don't, right? And so it's, well, I don't like talking to mental health professionals, or it's all these other excuses. So I started thinking about it, like, how do we make it work? Because another thing, part of that is that they also, none of them like to talk to clients at all, like at all. So as an industry, we've got a lot of people entering our industry or already in our industry that don't like interacting with clients at all. They don't like the conversation. They don't like the small talk. They're uncomfortable with it. They're awkward. They feel awkward. And instead of saying like, I'm going to make it my mission to get good at this, it's like easier just to say like, I don't like it. Right. So what's the answer as an industry? How do we do this? So I started thinking about it. If we have stylists that are going through this and they feel like this, I can guarantee you there's also clients that are the same. So what if we find a way to pair these people up? And so with my clients that are like that, I've started to tell them, like, you need to find a way to market the fact that you're a quiet chair, right? So in all of this that's going on, instead of acting and promoting yourself like you're just like all the other stylists and barbers and whatever, and have people coming in with an expectation of dazzling conversation and, somebody that's like anticipating their every need and all of that, they're not getting that because these stylists and barbers are not capable or willing, right? So their options are to, again, find another industry, because you're never going to make it like this if somebody is sitting in your chair thinking you're going to talk to them, or find a way, right? So if you market it that you're a quiet chair and there will be no small talk, and you'll effectively communicate through the consultation, but beyond that, set the expectation so that these clients aren't disappointed and the result will be different. But unless you're willing to do that and market it like that, and literally put a lot of energy into making sure that people understand that that's how you're going to operate, it's going to be very hard to build a clientele that way. So,
well, at that point, you're not over promising and under delivering too. That's
right.
You gain clients one at a time and you lose clients one at a time. So if that's not your lane, like you were saying, then listen, there's a great opportunity for somebody out there who doesn't like to do those things and have those conversations like we do. But I think that being creative in the school industry and Lauren always says there's never a problem without a solution. So sometimes it takes us kind of putting ourselves in other people's shoes, and in this case, our students, but saying, okay, you know what? So this isn't working for you. What will work for you? And, you know, the problem solving aspect.
But sometimes those conversations are hard, right? Like
Yeah, for
sometimes
sure.
it's like we have to get to the bottom of where the anxiety is coming. And some of it is it's new and they're not comfortable yet because they're learning, right?
Mhm.
But I'm like, but that's not anxiety, that's excitement. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like, let's change the way we're looking at this, because if you push through this anxiety ridden moment, you're going to get better at it and you won't have it next time.
And it's going to calm your anxiety down, because the thing that you fear the most is actually triggering these things. Now you can say, you know
And
what?
it's scary,
It wasn't that
right?
bad at all.
Right.
You know?
But
Mhm.
if it's really truly that you're uncomfortable talking to people, then we need to find a way to either make it work for you or you should find something else. And I will tell our students that, like, if it's something that's like they're unwilling to push through, they're unwilling to show up every day ready to work, they're unwilling, then this isn't the right career for you. And I'm not afraid to say it, because taking their money and acting like they'll make it knowing they won't is wrong. So we won't do it. But I think, you know, there's always that level of being uncomfortable. I hated public speaking. And when I say I hated it, I mean, I didn't do it. It was awful. But at some point in my career, I realized that if I ever wanted to do more, like I had to get better at this stuff. So I started putting myself in situations where I was like the speaker and I was awful. And you know, we talked about it before we went on. Now I can read a teleprompter like a pro. So like, you know, it's just a matter of like forcing yourself through those awkward and uncomfortable. And I was full of anxiety, but it was excitement, right? It was that excitement anxiety, not like, I can't do this, not crippling like panic
Right.
attack anxiety. So there's a difference. So I think my message to everyone listening is, if you're dealing with these, you know, you need to do some self-reflection and figure out why it's happening, because this is a tough industry and it isn't for everyone. So if you find yourself in a bad spot because you maybe picked the wrong industry, that's a different problem. But if it's just that you are struggling to connect with people, like, let's look at it different and find a way to market that to your advantage.
Mhm.
Shirley Nelson had a good one. She asked, "How do you find the patience to do this?" I think that when you go into education, when you go into
You
education,
marry someone with charisma and they find the patience when you don't have it.
so you marry someone. No, I'm just teasing. You know, it's every day is a new day for me, and I understand that, you know, not everybody's going to agree on, you know, what we have set forth for them every day. Not everybody's going to have a good day. But, you know, one of the things that I do when we have our huddles with our students is I always remind them to be responsible for the energy they bring into our building. Whatever you got going on outside of here that doesn't have anything to do with us, we're here to learn. We're here to have a good time. We're here to have a good day. And that's what we project. I live kind of by 3 rules, and this is what I teach our students all the time. So what I do to get through as an educator is 3 things. You show up, you work hard, and you listen, right? So you got to show up, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. Sometimes the intrinsic value that you can instill in students is second to none. I may be the only person that tells our student that they're loved. You know what I mean? So even ending our morning huddles with, if nobody else told you today, remember, I love you, and everybody in this room loves you too. Like, so those are the things that actually help to build tolerance. Those are the things that actually help to build character. But most importantly, it helps to instill like a little bit of hope in everybody who comes in our program, and you know, hopefully that makes a difference. So that's how I kind of deal with it. And I do have very long patience, but I think that by having hard conversations with students and not sugarcoating it for them. I tell people all the time, I'm a barber, I'm not a baker. So don't look for me to sugarcoat it at all. I'm coming at you with the real uncut, raw, like, yo, you're really messing up today, my man. You know, young lady, I really need you doing better. You know what I mean? And it's not anything that is it's not anything harsh, but I think that a lot of times man, I might get in trouble for saying this, but a lot of times I think that schools, they pump students up for failure. You know, well, you can make $50,000 a year. You can make six figures. Yeah.
Right, we're over here, not like you're acting. You can't though. No,
but it takes a certain kind of person and a certain type of work ethic to get to those things. They are 100% attainable, but nobody's talking about how hard you have to work. Nobody's talking about, you know, the late nights, the early mornings, like, you know, we spend more time with our students than we probably do with our kids, you know? And, you know, and luckily our kids are hair babies, so they understand, they get it. Our daughter works for us a couple days a week, and, you know, our son, you know, he's doing his thing. But I think that it's important to really dig deep into the psychology of why people do things, you know, helping them with their social and emotional intelligence, you know, how to solve problems, why it's so important to have a positive mental attitude. Those are the things that I think a lot of times, you know, whether they're not getting it, maybe they're not getting it at home, or they didn't get it at home. But, you know, I find myself being people's dad and sometimes their mom, and, you know, we have to do the good cop, bad cop thing pretty often. But I think that, you know, the new generation of students, if they show up, if they work hard and they listen, whatever they want out of this industry, they can have. But you got to be vulnerable. You got to open yourself up to doing some new things and being comfortably uncomfortable.
I think too, it's important to, I just lost what I had such a good one too.
Let me see if my charisma can rev it up, and then maybe it'll come.
Oh, I know what it is. I remember.
See, Andrew, I told you. Got it.
Listen,
You did it.
We've been here for like 12 hours already, so sometimes the thoughts might just. But what I was going to say is, I think it's important too for stylists and barbers to understand that what you put out is what you're going to get back from your clientele. So, you know, when I'm reading all of these posts online about clients being disrespectful of stylist time and being late and no showing, and I know it's a little bigger problem since COVID because people have just lost their minds, but it was a problem before that. And, you know, honestly, like, I haven't called off a day of work in probably 15 years. Not one day, you know, just push through. And I never ran behind, literally never. Like, I knew my times and I booked accordingly. And if a client was more than 15 minutes late, you know, we would just like cut off part of the service, whatever. But I never had any of these issues of people not respecting my time. But part of that was that I always over respected theirs, you know, and I think that that's an important lesson to teach our students too, is that if you're constantly running 15, 20 minutes behind and then losing it on your clients when they're the same because they expect you to be that late, you know, you're going to have a problem with that all the time. If you have clients not showing up, it might be worth stepping back and looking at, like, how often are you calling in? How often are you rescheduling these people? Because, you know, you might say, I only called off 3 or 4 times this year. You may have canceled the same 5 people all 4 of those times. So, you know, you've got to consider things like that, is if they can't count on you, don't expect to be able to count on them as well, you know? So that's another lesson that I feel really important to teach our students, is what the energy you're putting out and what you're putting out is what you're going to get back.
Yeah. We're getting kind of towards the end of our time, but I want to hit one more thing with you. And so I just want to pivot just a little bit, because I know that just like business in general, there are so many options, like talking about, you know, and if you're in the group that started in the 1900s with us, say yes in the comments, because I want to see how many 1900s hairdressers we have out there. But, you know, when we first entered, there was 2 options pretty much. You were either booth rent, which would be a big salon with a bunch of chairs and you would rent your booth, or you were commission. And that was pretty much it. Now we've got the traditional booth rent. We've got salon suites. We've got hourly. We've got commission. We have the new kind of destroy the hairdresser model, where it's like everything's just booked at a hourly pricing. Like, there's so many different business options. So I'd be curious, like, how are you having that conversation with your students?
So we have that conversation because, you know, each of those scenarios is going to fit somebody differently.
Right.
You know, I understand the value of suites, right? Rodrick and I, we owned a salon downtown Detroit before this. It only had 3 chairs. It was him and I, and then we had one other stylist. We just liked the smaller setup. The revenue is easier. You know, you make way more money when you have like a tiny space and you just, our 3-chair salon did $500,000 the last year we were open. So,
but I think it was kind of cool because we kind of marketed ourselves as more of like a special club, like a boutique salon. So, you know, that way you could kind of get the best of both worlds. You can get a barber service or color or cut or whatever.
But as far as the pay structures and how businesses are set up, you know, a suite would be good for somebody like us who travels a lot, and we wouldn't be great employees behind the chair, right? Like we're doing hair shows, and, you know, when somebody works for you, right, you're expected to be there and do your shifts, right? So I think suites are great for people that are doing a bunch of different things. And, you know, you're juggling all these different things you're doing, and it's great. And you kind of need to be just a little room to do your couple clients that you have. I think it could be good. It's not ideal as far as I'm concerned. If I would have been in a suite 5 years out of my apprenticeship, I would not be where I'm at today. I continued to grow in every salon that I was at, whether it was watching how the owner ran her business or his business, or you know, how everybody operated together, learning to get along with people and work next to people you don't like. You know, it made me so much better at not just what I did, but
like
the services that I offered, right? I was able to like watch other people give customer service and learn what other people do and inspire me to keep going. And I had an awful client. You could go in the back and be like, oh, I just need a vent for a second. You know, those things you don't get in a salon suite. Another thing I see is everybody promotes the salon suites like you get to keep all your money. You get to keep all your money. Well, these are the same people then complaining that their clients are texting them all day to book appointments and getting upset if they don't answer them for 3 days. And the stylist is like, well, I was off and they should know that I don't answer. You know, it's like you give all that up when you're a suite owner. You know, you've got to call your clients and cancel them when you're sick. And as an employee, you can call and be like, not coming in today, handle that, you know. So I think it's important to be honest with yourself and ask the questions why you're making these decisions. Are you going to a suite because you don't want to be held accountable to somebody else? And, you know, that's a different conversation. Like, okay, well, then just know that wherever you're at, that's where you're going to stay, right? As far as growth. But, you know, some people are like, I don't want the stress of having to worry about stock and booking clients and talking to them when I'm not at work. And, you know, maybe working for somebody is a great option for you. So I think it's important to consider, you know, what you're taking on as a suite owner, as a booth renter, as a commission stylist, as an hourly. You know, what do you want? I loved being hourly because I loved knowing that my paycheck was going to be X amount of dollars. When you're at a team-based salon making hourly, there's goals and you know exactly what's expected of you and how to, you know, rise through the ranks, you know. So I think it just is very, very specific. But I don't think a lot of people are very honest with themselves about why they're choosing the setup that they're choosing. You know, I think that there's pros and cons to all of it.
I think especially with our students, I think it comes down to really kind of understanding and knowing the individual student as to how we kind of approach, you know, what pay structure or what barbershop or what salon, is going to be best for them. So, you know, having that personal relationship and like really getting to know each of your students or people individually, that helps us to help them to kind of navigate through what structure is going to be better for them. But also, like, at the end of the day, you know, we're held to a standard by so many other people in the school industry and business. We have to really be careful on how we direct these students, where we direct them. Are they going to be successful in this place? You know, are they the ones that want to wear sweatpants and flip-flops all day long? Well, you need to go down to, you know, super bucks, fades and furs, or whatever the case may be. But, you know, if that student, you know, does want a little bit more and we see that work ethic and they have that 95% attendance and, you know, things like that, then yeah, they can thrive in other pay structures and in other places too. So just making an effort to to really understand the student, what their level of commitment is, their capability, how, how they act, the energy, the integrity, the character, and giving them those options. We're not one of those people or one of those schools who don't educate their students on, pay structure, finances, taxes, things like that. Like it's our life, right? So we don't want them going out there making the same mistakes that we did. So basically, it's like a fast track.
I actually didn't make mistakes ever, so.
Me neither. I never screwed up my taxes.
Well, shout out for charisma. I'm doing Wellness Wednesdays on with Andrew Carruthers and Sam Villa, and I'm not smart at all. Boom pow.
It's all fun. It's all fun on Wellness Wednesdays.
Hello.
And this is just coffee, guys.
It
looks like it's fun juice, but it's not.
It's fun juice for you.
For me.
But on a serious note, like just making sure that we're doing the right thing, and a lot of shops and salons out there, they some of them give us praise for doing that, because the students come in for interviews and they ask very, very good questions about the pay structure and and what's taxable, whatever the case may be. And I'll say this, people who don't have anything to hide are very honest. So for those out there that are looking at shops and salons, and you ask questions, and the shop manager or owner is giving you crap or asking you why you asking these questions, that's probably pretty much a red flag right there. And
I've been told off a handful of times, so it's all right though.
Yeah, but it's all good. It's all good, because again, it's not about who's right; it's about what's right. You know what I mean? So my advice to all the people that's listening and watching right now:
pay your taxes.
Have charisma, pay your taxes, and stay in your lane until it opens up. Everybody wants to take the elevator to success, but the people that are really making the serious dollars, we're taking the stairs, and we're taking it day by day. So
beautiful.
I don't think.
But what I think is awesome is, like, kind of throughout our conversation, it just comes back to it has to kind of be based on the individual. Like, sure. What do they want? What do they need? And Lauren, I love that you said, like, well, if you want to do this, and create something that fits that.
Right.
If you don't want to talk to clients, and in fact, in just a few weeks, we had Tara Abramowitz. She's a Redken artist that created these cards that you can put on your station that the client can flip and say, I want a silent appointment, or I want a talking appointment. Mm-hmm. And so what that tells me is there are people out there that would love nothing else but a hairdresser that would just do their hair and just let them be. Right. And so I think it's cool. Like, there's so many options, there's so many pay structures. And I think that part of it is it can feel really overwhelming. Like, it can almost induce anxiety that there is so much that the potential, but based on what you guys are saying, it's like, okay, so find what works, find a way, a place that fits who you are and what you do, while also pushing yourself a bit too.
Yeah, I think the most important thing, and what I don't see enough of, is people being introspective enough to be honest with themselves about what they need and what they want and how to get there, while understanding that there's sacrifice in everything. Right. We can't have it all with like minimal effort. Right. So like, it's just about understanding what you're willing to put in and what you're going to get out of that, and knowing your boundaries and your limits, and knowing how to work within those without punishing other people for not, bending to what you've decided should be allowed. Right. So that's kind of my big thing for the night.
Awesome. Well, Lauren, Rodrick, thank you both so much. I know that you are incredibly busy. I know that it's probably your 12th or 13th hour there at the school. And so we really appreciate you staying on for a little bit longer and having the conversation. I know you were watching the chat, so you can see that this was a very appreciated conversation. Please go and follow both of these awesome artists, because not only are they school owners, but they're incredible hairdressers, award-winning artists as well. So tons of inspiration to be found there. And if you do know someone that's looking to go to school, they have a fantastic and brilliant school there in Detroit. They've got partners in Salt Lake City that have incredible schools there. And if I was going to go to school, these are the kind of people I'd want to go to school with.
Oh,
Thank you,
that's
Andrew.
so sweet, man.
Yeah. Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Y'all be blessed. Have a good week.